Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Greg Davis. He's the author of Checkmate, which you can see in the background, and we're going to be discussing the concepts in the books. But he talks a lot about financial freedom, financial independence, the FIRE movement, and it's going to be a fascinating discussion for the audience interested in early retirement, investing, and the overall improve your quality of life. So, Greg, welcome.
Well, thanks so much for having me today, Chris. I'm looking forward to talking to you about these topics.
Yeah, I know we had connected through Podmatch and talk
Mhm.
about how you got started, what made you to write your book, and what you're doing now and helping clients.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I worked most of my career in Hershey Entertainment, which is in Hershey, beautiful Hershey, Pennsylvania. So I had 33 years of industry experience, most of those in Hershey. And then I went out and kind of did a career change, which I talk about in the book, and went into academia for 7 years, where I taught at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and I taught the wonderful world of accounting to those students. And then I retired, quite honestly, at age 61. My wife retired at 50. She was a medical practitioner, the pathologist. So we took the early retirement and came back to Pennsylvania, and I'm now in Philadelphia. And one of the first things I had on my bucket list as a retiree, Chris, was to write a book. And that's where Checkmate evolved. And just so people know, even though the title is very deceiving, it's not really a book about chess. I just use chess analogies throughout the book to kind of hammer the points home. And right now, I'm also writing as a freelance writer for a website called Physicians on Fire, which is all about retiring early and enjoying that retirement time frame.
Yeah, and I love that. And like I said, you're the typical bread and butter guest for the audience because the audience is interested in, you know, better quality of life, controlling their time, their income, controlling where they live, freedom, who they work for. And so you've achieved that and you're helping others. So kudos to you. Yeah. One thing that's question is especially you've done it very early and if you haven't, I mean, if you haven't noticed, you're kind of sleeping, but there were our world is rapidly changing and now we've got AI introduced. And so how do people get a sense and a grasp of just their finances and now you used to be able to work a single job for 60 years. Now you're changing a job every year, every other year, or maybe twice a year. So, and then working for
Yeah.
yourself. How do you get started?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. I actually spoke yesterday at a local college in York, Pennsylvania, York College of Pennsylvania, and some of the students actually asked questions about that very topic. Today's world is much different than certainly when I graduated way back in 1981, where quite honestly, the concept back then was you try and find a reputable company to work for and you stay for a length of time. I stayed at Hershey for 23 years, phenomenal company, loved working there, and they treated the employees very well. That's hard to find, right? And now today's economy, as the students pointed out yesterday, it's basically, as you mentioned, Chris, you go for a job, but you might stay a year or two and just keep bouncing around. I just think it's challenging, for your listeners. It's a different economy today. I mean, even though I'm in retirement, I'm still working part-time, and as is my wife. She works 3 days a week. In fact, she's right across the street now at a local ministry serving homeless people their mail and their meals. So I just think, as an audience, your folks have to be cognizant of that the world is changing so fast, right? With AI and everything else, it's the work from home concept is kind of mutilating a little bit as we come out of the pandemic from almost 4 years ago now. I just think people have to be really flexible in their approach to retirement, approach to jobs, first of all, and then retirement. And so I think, just be well-based. The more you can learn, whether it's through podcasts such as this or through magazines, books. Obviously, as an author, I'm a heavy proponent of reading books. I think there's so much out there to learn in today's world that enhances your ability to get that next job that might be better than where you were previously. So just be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, it's once you kind of open your eyes and understand that the world is changing. For me, it was 2002, and then for others, maybe have been, 2020.
Mhm.
And talking to younger generation, they get it. They understand this, what we're talking about. It's kind of the older Gen X and, that are kind of have to change their beliefs and their mindset. So you talk about this importance of lifelong learning and how it
Mm.
applies to career transitions. So what insights can you offer on navigating career transitions and the importance of lifelong learning?
Yeah, first of all, in lifelong learning, Chris, I think that's a very critical element to success of anybody in today's world. We actually talked about this a little bit in our classroom discussion yesterday. First of all, to your point, I had students who were absolutely shocked that I was at a company for 23 years, right? That just didn't seem like that made any sense. Why would you do that? And so I talked through that a little bit, but I think the lifelong learning concept is something we discussed yesterday in the classroom of, a lot of students feel, and I think I probably did when I was in my 20s, when I graduate from college, I'm done with schooling, right? And that's just not the way it works. I mean, in this world of fast moving information that changes every day, we need to keep learning. In fact, when I wrote the book back in 2022, I started in my classroom, there was 95 people wanting to be authors. I was like in the middle of the pack as far as age. There was people from their 30s all the way up to their 80s. And there's a lot to learn. So I think it's important, first of all, in this economy to be very well-rounded. And I think that's where, the education comes into play, through podcasts such as yours, Chris, through books such as Checkmate that we'll talk about, and also all the online sources are out there today. I think there's so much to gather in. It's almost overwhelming for people, quite honestly, right? So I guess my best advice is just kind of learn what I think, find your passion. And that's hard to do. I talked about this just in the classroom. It's hard to do in your 20s and 30s to find out what your passion is. Mine was working for a company such as Hershey that had a mission that was giving all their profits to an underprivileged school funding, which is the Milton Hershey School. And then for me, my personal mission was to share my knowledge with others. That's why I went into teaching. So I think you got to find your mission, work hard, and then also keep that education base going even into your 50s, 60s, and 70s, because the world's changing so fast, we need to keep up with it in some extent.
Yeah, I love that. Talking about traditional ideals, and we talked about, for example, these ideas of retirement, and these concepts are being upended. For example, when I was a kid, my grandparents were saying Social Security is going to be there to take care of you, and now it may pay for gas or whatever. And then my parents, they were saying a stable job, a pension. I don't think pensions even I mean, and then now people are saying 401k, and then your 3% withdrawal on a million is 30K. That's not enough to, that's almost that right above poverty line. So it's like and so what do people do? How do you balance these ideals? And people are saying, oh, the fire movement, that's a scam. How do you reconcile these things?
It's interesting. In my book, I talk about the three-legged stool of retirement, which had been pensions, as you mentioned, Chris, Social Security, and then just some level of personal savings, right? If
Yeah.
you think about that, as you mentioned, pensions are gone. And then what really happened there is we took away company-provided pensions from people and pushed them into 401ks, which was where each employee has to make kind of their own decisions on where they invest and how much and so forth. And, I talk about this in the book. It's kind of a shame in America, but we aren't really well educated in the personal finance realm, right? I mean, I was never taught that in school. The class I went to yesterday was a personal finance course, which is an elective course at this college. And these students, it was 33 students yesterday. They were absorbing this information like it was, golden to them. And I love that. I mean, I wish I had had a course like that. So I think we got put into a really weird situation as American employees where all the investing kind of fell on our shoulders and we weren't well versed to do that. So, I think it's important to understand that personal finance is a challenge for a lot of people. And a lot of people I know don't even like to talk about money, right? And I discussed a topic in my book called money dates, because my wife's one of those people. She's a retired pathologist, hates talking money and finances. So we do something once a month called a money date, where
Uh,
we go out to a local restaurant, have a nice bottle of wine, and unfortunately for her, I get to share like where we are with our financial goals as we headed into retirement. Now that we're in retirement, how we're doing to like a monthly budget. And so those are a little bit painful, but the wine and the nice dinner makes that feel a little bit more pleasurable, right? So the money dates is something I think I've even seen in Wall Street Journal. People are kind of experimenting with that across the country.
Talking to a lot of people, these money lessons and these money habits are actually a lot of times formed around conversations at the dinner table. So like money is it's oxygen. It's kind of how we exchange value and
Right.
how we provide for ourselves. So if you don't talk about money, it's like kind of you're almost I don't know what you're just flying blind or it's hard to.
Right. It's a great point. I mean, we don't like to talk about it, but as you said, it's kind of the main thing that drives a lot of our where we go in life, what we do as a job. It's a lot of it's money driven.
So kind of transitioning because you've done this. So balancing professional and personal life, and you've managed to excel in both areas. What strategies have you found most effective for maintaining this balance, and how can others apply these lessons to their own lives?
Sure. Great question, Chris. We talked about this a little bit in my classroom yesterday. Is one of the students had a great question on work-life balance because I share in the book where I had an experience at Hershey. It was probably the toughest 2 years of my 23-year tenure there. I was interim chief financial officer for a period of like a year and a half or so. And it was a really difficult time for the company. We were going through some divestitures. We had a horrible year in that 2011 that I was the CFO. And just I also had some personal issues where a good friend of mine who ran our amusement park operation died suddenly at age 48. So
Mhm.
those are really tough things you have to kind of manage, right? And I told the students yesterday, the work-life balance is something you have to keep in mind, no matter how busy you are, how stressed you are. For me, the way I got through that period that was so difficult for me, as I discussed in the book, was to kind of keep things that made me happy way up front in my totem pole, right? Family, my wife, going to family events, doing things I enjoy. We like to bicycle. We love going to baseball games. So as much as we all get busy and stressed, and boy, in this world, the negative news is prevalent every day. Anytime you turn on the news program, it's bad stuff, right? I just think we have to kind of keep those things that drive us, Chris, to being happy at the forefront of our mind. So for me, even though I was working in that 2 year stretch, maybe 65, 70 hour weeks, and certainly for people in the medical profession, that's not at all uncommon for you folks. Um, I just think that it's important to keep those key things. For me, it was exercise, spending time with my wife and family, and doing things I enjoyed, like going to baseball games and playing chess, which is kind of why I had a Checkmate name on my book.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the game. And also in today's society we need more leaders and more accountability and adaptability. So you've led both academic corporate settings, and how do you view the evolution of leadership in today's rapidly changing world? What skills do you think people need to adapt and thrive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think leadership is key. I mean, that was the key to my success. And I never really thought of myself as a leader in my 30s and 40s, quite honestly, even though I was moving up the ranks within Hershey. But I think I had some really good mentors who, kind of shadowed over me in my early stages of my career and taught me the importance of being a good leader. And, I've read lots of books on it, and we've gone lots of courses on it as well. But I think the key is, you know, don't be the kind of the know-it-all leader, right? Absorb the people around you, absorb all the knowledge they have, because quite honestly, they're the experts in that department or in the classroom environment, what have you. And I just found that the best leaders are the ones that listen to you carefully and actually, kind of emulate the best leaders they've ever seen or worked under. And so for me, I was very lucky. I had two CEOs in particular. One in particular, it's in my book, Bill Simpson. He was chief executive officer at Hershey for a number of years. And I learned from him the power of, quite honestly, giving up duties to others, that delegation that we all struggle with. I mean, in my early part of my career, Chris, I'm not sure about yours, I had trouble delegating because I always thought I was the best one to do that task, right? But as I got up the ranks of Hershey and I learned from Bill and other mentors, the only way you're going to succeed in life is if you give up some things, right? Let them do it. And if they struggle a little bit, that's all right. That's the learning process for your employees. But that also makes you more valuable as a leader because you keep moving up the ranks of the company and providing more services. And it also promotes those people who work for you. And that's really the key to a good leader, in my opinion, is there's nothing more that I've enjoyed in my life than having somebody that I maybe have hired in their 20s and now they're a senior leader within the organization at Hershey or elsewhere. So I think that leadership is really a critical component to being successful in the business or academic world.
Yeah, yeah. So well said. And kind of ending it on a high note, your book explores the pursuit of happiness and share your perspective on defining and achieving happiness. You seem like a very self-actualized individuals, and how can individuals practically approach this in their daily lives?
Yeah, it's funny. I've gotten some feedback when I went to book signings last year and even on podcasts this year that people think this is just kind of a sham. Like, how can he always be so happy? Well, I just think, Chris, as I talk about in my book, I came up from a very kind of a poor upbringing from a family perspective. We
Mm.
grew up on a farm in a very rural part of Pennsylvania. And I was just very fortunate to have siblings I was the youngest of five. And so I was very fortunate to have siblings who were really hard workers. And I learned really at an early age, being on a farm, that hard work is what gets you to, attain success. And I think happiness for me was making sure I was doing the things that I most enjoyed. And like I said earlier, for me, that was being around friends. I was very lucky to have met my wife in my 20s. She's 6 years younger than I, but she has been alongside me for 34 years. So, I think happiness is being around people you want to be around. That's friends and family. And then doing the things that are most enjoyable to you. And for me, sports is a very heavy part of my life. Here we are in March, and I love this month because it's March Madness with college basketball. So I think for me, happiness is being around the people you most want to be around and spending lots of time with them. For me, that is friends and family and my wife. And also doing the things that you most enjoy. And for me, as I said, that's sports related and doing things like playing chess. I just this year, I had taken a 45-year hiatus from playing live chess tournaments. I
Uh,
hadn't played since my high school days. And
oh.
now this year I've been to two already. Not doing particularly well because the young players are really, really challenging today. But I enjoy the experience, right? It's great for your mind, and it's great to sit and challenge yourself that way. So happiness is, sum it up, is do the things you most want to do and that bring you good smiles in your life.
Contact you and check out your book and see your work and follow you.
Yeah, I have a couple things. I have a website out there called www.davischeckmate.com. It's a really cool website. It has some of the offerings I have. It talks about the book. It gives some really cool reviews from people who have read it. I also have an Instagram link, which is at Davis Checkmate. And then I'm on LinkedIn under Greg Davis. And that's where I do most of I post quite a bit on there, probably 2, 3 times a week, Chris. And I share some of the articles I write for the Physicians on Fire website on the LinkedIn site. But even my website has some of those articles, so I think people would get an enjoyment of that. The book Checkmate is out there on Amazon. It's also out on Audible. I have
Yeah.
a Audible version of that, and I'm looking forward to just kind of keep pushing the concepts of what are in the book. I think you'll find it has 12 life lessons in the book, and I always challenge people at the end of my book is to at least come away with one or two life lessons that you can apply to your life. And then I hope that I have my email on page 150 of the book. I hope they would share that. I've had a handful of people who have shared some opportunities that have just been quite honestly kind of mind-numbing, how it's kind of turned their life around, just thinking in a more positive manner. So I encourage people to, listen to more podcasts such as yours, learn some of these great tips on early retirement and just personal finance tips in general to make your life a little bit better. And I hope the book brings everybody some happiness as it has me.
I love that. And for all the audience out there, let's thank Greg for coming on and talking about this very inspiring and wonderful experience and achieving, fulfillment and happiness, which is the end game. It's not accumulation of money. It's more to enjoy what you do. And Greg is the epitome of that. And be sure to give him a like and follow on all of his socials. Check out his book on Amazon, leave a 5-star review. And with that, thanks so much for coming on.
Have me, Chris. Have a great rest of the week.